Okay, I wanted to make a quick video because I had a student ask about angular clearance. So, like in last year's game, there was a charge pad, and how would we go about determining the angular clearance within CAD? So I have a sketch open. This is just a very basic 2x1 structure. Yeah, most of you guys should be able to get to this point pretty easily. And then I have 3 holes. The center hole profile has an 1/8 inch drop center, so that's 0.125. Okay, and then I'm rocking 6-inch wheels. Okay, and wheel size and wheel spacing are critically important to developing clearance as well as your drop center. So I've catted up a basic bumper here. Notice that this dimension is not 3/4. It's 23/32, and that's intentional. 3/4 inch plywood is not 3/4 of an inch. It's 3/4 of an inch before it gets planed and before it gets sanded. So the actual nominal real dimension is 23/32. And if you want, we can discuss like why that is and the philosophy behind it, but it's 23/32. And then it's 5-inch tall bumper, which is standard, and then 2.5-inch pool noodles. I have not included any fabric thickness because I don't think I think that takes away from understanding the concept a little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and click L on our keyboard. We're gonna go to our middle point right here, and we're gonna draw a line out here in a no man's space over here. Okay, now we're going to hit T on our keyboard. This will bring up tangent, and we're going to click on our line, and we're going to click on our outer wheel. What this is going to do is this is going to create a representation of the ground, of the floor. I know normally that's our reference cube, but in this case, because we have a drop center, the intent of that is while we're driving in this direction, we're only going to be on this wheel and this wheel. This wheel is actually going to be in the air. So if you imagine that this is the floor, this wheel is going to be completely in the air. And we do that to reduce friction and to decrease our turning radius. While we turn, if our center of gravity is right here, we'll only be turning on this one wheel. This rarely happens for us, but we're going to reduce our turning radius significantly. So this represents ground. Now we're going to hit L on our keyboard again. This time we're going to go off no man's space up here by the bumper. And we're going to cross over our outer wheel like this. Now it's very important that these lines are blue when we draw them. If they're not, if they're black when we draw them, go ahead and delete it and redraw it to make sure that it's blue. We want it unconstrained. We're going to go back to our tangent tool, our T on our keyboard. We're going to click on our line, and we're going to click on our pool noodle. This has made this tangent to the pool noodle. So, and we're going to do the same to our outer wheel. In games that have smooth surfaces, so metal, polycarbonate, anything that we're angularly going to go up a ramp or something like that, we can ignore the thickness of the fabric, the friction of the fabric, these sorts of things. In games where the object is rough, we might not be able to do that. It's also important to remember that sometimes the field that we build at home out of wood is not smooth like polycarbonate. But for the purposes of this, we're going to ignore the fabric consistencies. So, to determine the maximum angle that we can scale, we dimension in between the two lines. Now, this number, 15.694, this number represents the maximum angle that we can approach at while this wheel maintains contact. And this is important because if we wanted to do the opposite, let's say we were actually on these two wheels. The way that we would do that is we would draw a line like this, and we draw a line like this. This is now going to represent the floor as well, but this is the floor when this wheel is in the air. we're going to tangent there, and we're going to tangent here. Okay. Notice how it's really not that big of a deal. Across the entire robot, it's, you know, not significant. Well, it is significant. It's just not rather large number. Okay. So now we can see that our angular distance on the maximum, if we were on these back two wheels, if we were making contact on these two wheels and approaching this direction, it's only 17. It's not significantly larger. So what this would tell us is the maximum that we can go up is a 15-degree angle. Now, I normally would stop here because this is where the question stopped. But I do think that it can be important to go one step further. What is the linear clearance of the drivetrain? So we're going to hit L on our keyboard. And now we're going to find the lowest point. In this case, I'm going to use this point on the pool noodle because I know that it's perpendicular with these, or it's parallel with these and the entire rail frame. So I'm going to take this point. I'm going to go out into free space like this. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my tool. I'm going to go perpendicular. I'm going to make this new line perpendicular with our floor 1. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this, I pressed I for coincide, or coincident. Yeah, coincident, to attach it to the line. Now what I'm going to do is, because my bumper is in line with this point, I can draw a new line. You can also do this from the same point, but it's not necessary. Notice how when I have this little yellow dotted line show up, that's going to make my line black. I don't want that. I want it to keep it blue, so I drew it at an offset. Now what I can do is I can make this line perpendicular to my floor 2. Okay. Now, by dimensioning between these 2 points, actually, no, by dimensioning this line, I can see the maximum linear clearance as well. So notice one of them is 1.8 and one of them is 2.3. This is important to know because, actually, let me do this differently. Let me do it from the same point. I realize it's better if I do it from the same point. That way you can see that they're not going to be parallel with one another. Notice how they're not parallel with one another, and they're not parallel with the ground either. Okay, so this distance represents the maximum thing that we could drive over, the height, the linear height of the thing that we could drive over. So we could, you know, if we were balanced on our back 2 wheels, we could drive over a 2-inch bump. If we were balanced on our front 2 wheels, we would not be able to. This is important because if we just go back to our distance from our reference cube to, say, the side of our rail, it's 2.125, right? So you might make your clearance 2.125, and you might say, hey, look, you know, it's going to be good enough to drive over the bump. But turns out 50% of the time, it's not. Likewise, the charge pad this past year was not a linear dimension. It was a angular dimension, which tripped up some students previously. So this would also be an effective way of going about finding that as well. So I just thought I'd answer that real quick. That way you guys could be mindful of it come kickoff. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Boo!